Hello everyone, my name is Kane King, and on this channel I tell scary or interesting Reddit stories I found online. This is a safe space to enjoy stories of the unknown. If you have any stories you'd like to share with me of your own, you can contact me on Instagram or even post on the channel subreddit page with the link down below in the description. But for now, enjoy the video. Any woman who has spurned a man's advances already knows my story. Rejecting someone you have known and loved is, I think, even more perilous than rejecting a stranger. Edward and I dated for 6 months. He was an exceptional man in so many ways, but he soon revealed his contemptible side, and that soured the relationship. Signaled by numerous red flags, I broke up with him. He couldn't accept that. His relentless pursuit began. The monstrous man had veiled his true evil for so many months. I think he'd been aching to free it. His vengeance was savage and unyielding, threatening social media posts, candid photos he'd taken of me, an emailed schedule of my family's movements. A restraining order did nothing to stop him. Nevertheless, after months of fear, the horrendous stalking came to a bitter end. In December, Edward tragically froze to death in his snow-covered, beaten-up, unheated Ford Mustang. He had been waiting outside my house for hours, at the blistering height of winter. A neighbor found him in the morning. Cards on the table. Edward wasn't even his real name, and I'm not exactly sure why I'm protecting his identity, given that he's dead. I guess I'm still scared of him. Understandable, given that even death hasn't halted his heinous hunt. Edward was a technological wizard. That was his true love. He called himself an innovator, not a programmer, an artist. During the final months of our relationship, as I started to doubt the man's ethical compass, he became obsessed with the idea of the human soul. Artificial intelligence bored him. The future, he said, was a mesh of man and machine, immortality. He believed he could upload the human consciousness to a computer. He didn't invent the concept, of course. Mind uploading is a well-documented hypothetical among scientists and philosophers alike. He's watched too many sci-fi films, I thought. But I suppose science fiction often becomes reality, doesn't it? Many people think it's impossible to upload the human consciousness to a computer, but I suppose they only think in terms of computing. Edward's research went beyond ordinary programming. He was ranting and raving about grey code, an underground programming language in the occult. His eerie obsession didn't faze me, in all honesty. I would have endured the plight of the suffering artist, had he not struck me across the face on one particular evening. Abuse was the line. Edward apologized profusely, of course, but the longer I ignored him, the more violent his messages grew. After his death last month, I thought the torture would cease. It did, for a couple of weeks, but then awful things started happening. "Nice sunset, Natasha." That was his comment on a recent Instagram picture of me. My friends flooded my DMs, asking whether I thought Edward's account had been hacked. Obviously. What an asinine question. The man was dead. It had to be somebody's perverse prank. But I'd blocked Edward's account, which made the whole ordeal quite traumatizing for me. I thought somebody had bypassed Instagram security. That made me feel vulnerable. I contacted Instagram about it. They apologized, suspended his account, and I thought that was the end of it. The comments persisted, however. And it wasn't just happening on Instagram, it was happening on every one of my social accounts. I believe that somebody was tormenting me. Maybe one of Edward's fucked up relatives who blamed me for his untimely death. I told the police, and they promised to conduct a thorough investigation. Yeah, right. I was a little shaken, but I wouldn't say I was scared. The cyber harassment had stirred some of the old trauma and fear, but I felt resilient. Nobody could scare me as much as Edward, and Edward was dead. I was convinced that it was some idiot with a vile vendetta. It was what happened a week ago that defied all rational explanation, filled me with fear unlike any I've ever experienced. One night I was lying in bed, and a ping from my laptop startled me. It was open on my desk, less than a foot from the end of my bed. I certainly hadn't left it open. I hadn't left it switched on, for that matter. And I hadn't left it on Facebook. Who even uses Facebook anymore? The screen was scrolling by itself. Somebody hacked my computer. That was my first thought. The mystery hacker was looking at Edward's profile. The scrolling stopped, and I found myself staring at an old photo of Edward and me at a party. It was from the early days of our relationship. We looked happy. "I get it, Ryan," I murmured, assuming Edward's brother to be behind the torture. "It's my fault that he's dead." And then something horrifying happened. The photo moved. To be more specific, Edward moved. I, like everything and everyone else in that picture, remained static, but Edward, suddenly untethered, strolled over to the photographer. He was engulfing every square inch of the full-screen photo. My dead ex-boyfriend was staring through the laptop screen, staring at me. "What the fuck is this?" I cried breathlessly. I wasn't even sure how it was possible to override Facebook in that way, but I still felt that everything was within the realm of possibility. It's Ryan. It has to be Ryan. That didn't explain how he doctored an old photograph to include a moving video of Edward. Deepfake technology? "Hello, Natasha," Edward said. His voice was garbled as if he was swirling in a blender. My chest tightened. Did Edward record himself to torture me from beyond the grave? I wondered. "You look beautiful," his inhumane voice gushed. "I like your new hair, and the dog pajamas are adorable." I yelped quietly. It couldn't be a pre-recording. How would he have known that I changed my hairstyle? How could he have known about the new pajamas? Ryan. It has to be Ryan. He's watching me through my webcam. And then something happened which couldn't be attributed to Ryan. Edward's demeanor shifted, as had been the case in our 6-month relationship. He swiftly transitioned from a genial gentleman to a vehement villain. His pixelated head tilted to one side, as if he were simply ogling me from a fresh angle. His smile had only changed ever so slightly, but it was now brimming with malignancy. The dead man's charm was vanishing. So were his pupils, for that matter. Seconds later, all that was remained were 2 white, soulless eyes. It felt as if I was seeing the real Edward at long last, the subhuman thing that lay dormant beneath his scintillating shell. A thunderous thudding sound sent a shockwave through my body. Horrified, I watched Edward's hands pressing against the screen of my laptop, as if he were trapped underwater. He continued to push against the surface of the pixelated pool. The screen continued to flex. I screamed in unbridled terror. I finally accepted that it wasn't Ryan. It wasn't anything that could be explained by earthly rhyme or reason. I wasn't going to wait for my undead abuser. Never again. I scuppered from my bed, beelining for the door of my room. Before I could flee, there was a blinding flash of light from my laptop screen. The door swung shut, and a piercing sound emitted from the speakers of my laptop. It sounded like a ghastly cry of agony. "You're not leaving me again," Edward commanded. I rotated to face the digital entity that was slithering free from my laptop screen, which was stretching around him like elasticated rubber. When he finally escaped his digital prison, Edward's long limbs glitched ghoulishly before me. He adjusted his posture, standing upright and gazing upon me with white, empty eyes. My stalking spectre widened his fiendish Cheshire cat grin. "I found a way to live forever," he whispered. "If you join me, I promise we won't ever fight again." I tirelessly battled to open my bedroom door, which was being held shut by an invisible force. Twisting my head to look at the monstrous creature behind me, I whimpered in horror. Edward slowly stumbled towards me on unsteady, glitching legs, toppling his head to one side. I screeched at the top of my lungs and turned back to face the door, desperately yanking the handle. That was when I had a dreadful idea. I darted towards my bedside table, swerving past Edward's outstretching arms. Picking up a half-full glass of water in one hand, I turned to face my ex-boyfriend. His lips parted, and a pit of blackness was revealed. The same high-pitched wail erupted from the caverns of his demonic body. He knew what I was about to do. Without a moment's thought, I launched a glass of water at the digital ghoul that was lumbering towards me. Edward screamed in a robotic cry, so deafeningly loud that my ears popped. As the water soaked through his shimmering, translucent skin, he began to spasm manically. His unbound digital form retreated, and I watched the laptop screen reclaim him. My bedroom door swung open, so I assumed my undead stalker must simply have been too distracted to keep me trapped. I seized my opportunity and fled my flat. I've been living in my car for the past few days. This is the first time I've used technology since the incident. I'm currently in a computer cafe. There are plenty of people around, and I don't think Edward would come for me in a public place. But who knows? I just wanted to post here because I need help. I don't know where to go or what to do. I have nightmares of being imprisoned in Edward's eternal digital prison. I keep seeing flickering screens out of the corner of my eye. Should I get off the grid and avoid technology for the rest of my life? I can't run. He's everywhere. Every single night, at seemingly random times, something knocks on my door. Sometimes it is a heavy, desperate beating, and others it is quiet and soft. But no matter what I do, it always happens. I've sort of grown accustomed to it until recently. It began about 2 months ago when I had just moved into my home. 1 bed, 1 bath, near a relatively quiet street. It was all I could ever dream of. The indications of the past presence of the homeowners still scattered the abode. Old candy wrappers, crumbs, and the occasional lost toy or two. But they would be fixed in time. It was when I was going to bed for the first night when I heard something. 3 knocks at the front door. They were very, very loud. I thought the house was going to come off the foundation for a moment. Believing it was important, I rushed to the door. I quickly unlocked it as fast as I could. However, nobody was at the door. I chuckled to myself, believing it was just a simple ding-dong ditch that some kids pulled on me. Although I thought it was strange, they didn't just use the doorbell installed. However, I tiredly jotted back to my bed, awaiting the next day. The next morning I finally got a moment to meet the community members, one of whom was my next door neighbor, Fred. Me and Fred liked each other right off the bat. We even went to the same college a few years apart. We spent that day talking about our lives when I brought up the knocking that happened last night. When I brought it up, Fred immediately went from a carefree grin to a concerned gaze. When I asked him what was wrong, he said, "The people before you also complained about knocking a week earlier. I think it's what motivated them to hurry up with their moving." When asked if they saw anything, Fred just shook his head. "Probably just some troublemakers. I wouldn't let it concern you." And with that, we said our goodbyes. At that point, I just brushed off the knocking and went back home. When the knocking happened again, it happened while I was in a deep slumber. 3 knocks, even louder than the first. It had woken me up, but I brushed it off as another attempt to prank me. When I woke up, I barely even remembered the knocking until I was having my morning coffee and saw the window cracked. I called the police, however nothing came of it, no evidence of the culprit or where they went off to. When I asked officers if this had happened before, they simply said, nope. They told me they would be on watch and to keep my doors locked in case they tried to get in. And with that, they were off in their cruisers. Although it became more apparent that whoever these pranksters, they were determined to make me fall for the trick, even breaking my windows to try and get a riot of me. This time I thought they wouldn't try it again, because they had already tried with no results. So I went to bed and again heard the 3 knocks. It was much, much quieter, almost sounding as if the wind itself was doing it. I again bolted to the door and found nobody. No damage to the windows either. Over the next 2 months I had grown used to it, thinking whoever was doing it would just give up. However, they did not. The same 3 knocks, however, none of them were as loud as the first one. I just accepted that it was a sacrifice for having such a good house. That was until the knock happened at my bedroom window. Opening my eyes slowly revealed nobody was there, of course. I was immediately put on edge throughout the night, not closing my eyes once. To say I was tired that morning was an understatement. I needed 3 cups of coffee to even get myself to drive to work. I then got to sleep at the tiny intervals my boss wasn't watching me, enough to get me through once work ended. However, when I wasn't sleeping, I made a plan. My neighbor Fred would watch from the outside house to see who it was and catch them. Possibly give them a long talk on what trespassing laws and harassments were, then send them on their way. When the night came, my body immediately fell asleep, hoping to finally catch whoever was doing this. That's when I heard it, 3 knocks as always. I immediately texted Fred to see if they caught them, but he said nobody was outside the house. It's when I got that message I heard 3 knocks outside my bedroom door. It's at that moment I realized the knocking was happening inside the home all along. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description, along with a few links to buy my dark fantasy novel. I hope you have an amazing day. Until next time, bye bye.